A white police officer stereotypes and arrests a black man, only to learn he is the mayor of the city. It was a quiet Tuesday night, the kind of shift Officer Sam Harper usually enjoyed. He liked the stillness, the feeling of having his city under his watchful eye. As he turned down a dimly lit side street, he noticed a man walking alone, dressed in a black hoodie and jeans. Sam's mind immediately went on high alert, his years on the force and his gut instinct telling him something was off. Pulling the cruiser to the curb, Sam stepped out and called to the man. "Hey, you there?" The man slowed but didn't stop, sparing only a quick glance in Sam's direction. Irritated, Sam quickened his pace, catching up to the man in a few long strides. "Sir, I need to see some ID," Sam demanded, his voice clipped and firm. The man turned fully toward him, his face partially obscured by the hood, but Sam could see his expression, a mixture of weariness and frustration. "I'm just out for a walk," the man said, his voice calm but clearly annoyed. Sam's suspicions flared. The man's reluctance to hand over his ID only fueled his assumptions. "Sir, I won't ask again," Sam insisted, his hand hovering near his badge as if to emphasize authority. The man sighed, pulling his wallet out and flipping it open. Sam barely glanced at the ID before returning his gaze to the man's face. "I don't know why this is necessary," the man murmured, his tone now tinged with warning. "You're making a mistake." Ignoring the words, Sam took a step back and radioed in, certain he'd caught someone up to no good. Sam didn't know why the man's tone got under his skin. Maybe it was the calm defiance in his voice or the way he didn't flinch under pressure. Sam felt a familiar tightening in his chest, a mix of authority and stubborn pride that pushed him to follow through with the arrest. This man had challenged him, however subtly, and Sam wasn't about to back down. "You're coming with me," Sam declared, his voice sharp. He stepped forward, pulling out his handcuffs. The man shook his head slowly, almost as if he felt sorry for Sam. "This really isn't necessary," he said again, his voice a calm warning, but Sam's mind was set. This man's confidence felt too much like disrespect, and he wasn't going to stand for it. "Put your hands behind your back," Sam ordered. For a moment, he thought the man might resist, and he prepared himself for a struggle. Instead, the man complied, raising his wrists in a resigned, almost bored gesture. As Sam snapped on the cuffs, the man sighed, looking at him with an expression Sam couldn't quite place. "I'll come peacefully, officer, but you're making a mistake," he said one more time. "Save it," Sam muttered, feeling both irritated and triumphant as he led the man to the cruiser. In that moment, Sam was too wrapped up in his own sense of authority to realize what the man was really trying to say. He didn't check the man's ID again. He didn't even ask for a name. All he saw was someone he thought deserved to be arrested. It was a mistake that would change everything. The ride back to the station was tense and silent. Sam drove with a sense of duty, refusing to glance at the man seated quietly in the back. He didn't want to give him the satisfaction of any acknowledgement, feeling certain he'd done his job right. When they arrived, Sam escorted the man into the booking area, gesturing for him to sit on the bench. A few officers nearby glanced up, curiosity flickering across their faces, but they returned to their work, too busy to inquire. Sam began the standard booking procedure, still not checking the ID in the man's wallet. He ran through the usual questions without a hint of friendliness. "Any prior convictions?" "No," the man replied, his tone cool but unyielding. "Do you understand the charges being placed against you?" The man met his gaze, his calm demeanor unwavering. "You haven't told me any charges yet," he replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Sam clenched his jaw, irritation simmering beneath the surface. He didn't appreciate the man's attitude, his refusal to show any sign of fear or nervousness. To Sam, it felt like the man was challenging him with every word. As Sam entered the man's details into the system, his supervisor, Captain Hayes, walked by. She gave the man a cursory glance, then froze, her eyes widening in recognition. For a moment, she simply stared, her mouth open as if words had failed her. "Sam," she began, a note of disbelief in her voice. "Do you even know who this is?" Sam turned to her, confused, but the expression on her face was unmistakable. Something wasn't right, and in that moment, the gravity of his mistake began to dawn on him. Captain Hayes's face had drained of color, her eyes shifting between Sam and the man on the bench. She took a slow, steadying breath and turned to Sam with an intensity that caught him off guard. "Officer Harper," she said, her tone controlled but sharp. "That man is Mayor Andre Blackwell." Sam's stomach dropped, his mind racing to process her words. "The mayor?" he stammered, looking back at the man who now wore a bemused expression, as if this scene were unfolding just as he had expected. Andre Blackwell, the newly elected mayor, had been making waves since his campaign. Known for his calm but uncompromising stance on social reform, he had quickly become a respected leader in the community. Sam remembered the name well. He'd heard it countless times in discussions around the precinct. But never in a million years did he think he'd encounter the mayor like this. The captain's eyes flashed with frustration. "You didn't check his ID?" she asked, though it was more of an accusation than a question. Sam opened his mouth to respond, but words failed him. He realized with a sinking feeling that he had never actually looked closely at the ID. He'd been too focused on his assumptions, on his own narrow view of who the man was and what he was doing. The room fell silent as Sam took in the enormity of his error. He had just arrested the mayor, not because of any real crime, but because he had assumed, on sight alone, that he was suspicious. Mayor Blackwell rose from the bench, his calm demeanor unchanged. "Captain, I'd like to have a word with you. And Officer Harper here, if he doesn't mind." His voice was steady, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. And Sam knew that this word was going to change everything. As Sam followed Captain Hayes and Mayor Blackwell into the conference room, he felt a crushing weight settle over him. His mind raced with what this would mean for his career, his reputation, and his life. He'd never made a mistake of this scale before, and the consequences of this one felt overwhelming. Once the door closed behind them, Captain Hayes crossed her arms, fixing Sam with a hard, disappointed stare. "Officer Harper, I don't think I need to explain just how serious this is," she began, her voice barely concealing her frustration. Sam swallowed, unable to look up. He managed a shaky response. "Captain, I thought he was acting suspicious. I had no idea." Mayor Blackwell held up a hand, silencing Sam. "Officer Harper," he said, his voice calm but pointed, "this isn't about me being the mayor. This is about how you saw me, who you assumed I was, and why. You didn't even give me a chance to explain myself." Sam felt a sharp pang of shame. In his mind, he scrambled for a defense, some justification for his actions, but nothing he could say felt right. "You made a snap judgment," the mayor continued, his eyes never leaving Sam's face. "And in this city, where trust between the community and law enforcement is fragile, actions like these do more damage than you might realize." Sam shifted uncomfortably, his face burning. I didn't mean any harm, sir," he said, his voice barely audible. "I was just trying to do my job." Blackwell's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Intentions matter, Officer Harper, but so do actions. This could have gone very differently if I weren't who I am. But the next person who faces this treatment might not be as fortunate." Sam felt his heart sink, realizing there was no easy way out of this. And as Mayor Blackwell's words echoed in his mind, he began to understand just how deeply he'd erred. In the days following the arrest, Mayor Andre Blackwell said little to the press. Reporters camped outside City Hall, eager for a comment on what had quickly become a high-profile incident. But Andre kept his silence. He didn't want to fuel the flames. He wanted to use this moment wisely, to create real change rather than more noise. Inside the police department, tension simmered. Officer Sam Harper tried to keep his head down, but the other officers' eyes were always on him, their whispers constant. Some expressed sympathy, suggesting he'd simply made a rookie mistake, but others were less forgiving. They knew that such a mistake was part of a bigger issue, one that Sam was only beginning to comprehend. Sam's attempts to defend himself to his colleagues met with blank stares. "I was doing my job," he repeated, almost convincing himself more than anyone else. But he couldn't shake the memory of the mayor's face, his calm but disappointed expression. Captain Hayes had called him in earlier that morning, but instead of a reprimand, she gave him a warning. "Sam, you need to think about why you made that call." This isn't just about one incident. It's about what that decision represents to people. The silence from Mayor Blackwell gnawed at Sam. He had anticipated backlash, expected the mayor to make a public statement condemning him. But Blackwell's quiet approach was far more unsettling. It left Sam to stew in his own thoughts, forced him to face the questions in his own mind, ones he couldn't easily answer. He wondered when, or if, the mayor would say something and what he would say if he did. Until then, Sam was left to dwell on his mistake, alone with the weight of what he had done. The silence didn't last long. Although Mayor Blackwell had refrained from commenting publicly, the story had already spread, igniting a wave of outrage across the city. Social media buzzed with discussions, articles, and heated debates. Local news channels aired the story in every cycle, framing it as a stark reminder of ongoing racial tensions within the community. People demanded answers and accountability. At the station, Sam felt the pressure mounting. His fellow officers grew distant, some barely meeting his eyes. A few offered sympathetic nods, but most kept their distance, wary of being caught in the fallout. Sam was becoming a symbol, an unwelcome reminder of the deep-seated biases people were now openly discussing. In coffee shops, on street corners, and in the crowded city squares, citizens debated the incident. Many questioned the integrity of the police, asking aloud why someone as prominent as the mayor could be wrongfully detained. If even the mayor wasn't safe from discrimination, they argued, what did that mean for everyone else? But it wasn't just the public that reacted. City officials were calling for changes, pointing to Sam's actions as evidence of a systemic issue that needed addressing. Proposals for police reform resurfaced, adding fuel to an already heated discussion on how law enforcement interacted with minority communities. Sam tried to stay off social media, but even in avoiding it, he couldn't escape the headlines that seemed to follow him everywhere he went. Each headline, each discussion felt like another blow, and each one chipped away at his sense of self. Through it all, Mayor Blackwell remained silent, his composure unbroken, as though he were letting the city itself make the case against Sam. And in many ways, it was more powerful than any words he could have spoken. It didn't take long before Chief Donovan called Sam into his office. The chief's expression was unreadable as Sam entered, his shoulders heavy with a mix of dread and resignation. Chief Donovan had been a fair leader, known for his commitment to both his officers and the community. But today, his stern gaze held none of the familiarity or warmth Sam had once relied upon. "Sit down, Officer Harper," the chief said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Sam took a seat, his gaze fixed on his hands, feeling like a schoolboy awaiting punishment. He braced himself for a reprimand, a lecture about public image, maybe even a suspension. But what the chief said next was nothing Sam expected. "We've had discussions with Mayor Blackwell," Chief Donovan began, his voice calm but unyielding. "He's asked to meet with you directly, not just for an apology or a statement, but something more substantial." Sam's eyes widened, caught off guard. "He wants to meet with me?" "Yes," Chief Donovan replied, leaning forward. "The mayor's proposal is that you spend the next month working alongside him on community initiatives. He believes that direct engagement might give you a better understanding of the people you serve." Sam felt a swell of disbelief and a flicker of anger. "You mean community service?" he asked, struggling to keep the edge out of his voice. The chief's expression didn't change. "Call it what you want. The mayor could have gone a different route. He could have made this a high-profile disciplinary case, demanded your resignation. Instead, he's offering you a chance to learn." For a moment, Sam sat in stunned silence. His instinct was to reject the offer, to defend his actions. But somewhere deep down, he knew he couldn't afford to refuse. Reluctantly, he nodded. "I'll do it, Chief." Chief Donovan's gaze softened just a little. "Then meet with the mayor tomorrow morning. I'd suggest you go in with an open mind." The next morning, Sam arrived at City Hall with a mixture of resentment and anxiety swirling inside him. He wasn't looking forward to facing the mayor, much less agreeing to work alongside him for an entire month. But Chief Donovan's words from the previous day echoed in his mind. Go in with an open mind. Mayor Andre Blackwell was waiting for him in a small conference room, his calm demeanor as unshakable as ever. He gestured for Sam to sit, and Sam, feeling awkward and out of place, complied. Officer Harper, the mayor began, his tone measured but firm. Thank you for agreeing to this arrangement. Sam shifted uncomfortably, resisting the urge to respond defensively. I didn't have much of a choice, he replied, unable to mask the bitterness in his voice. Andre raised an eyebrow, acknowledging Sam's tone without reacting to it directly. I understand you might feel that way, but I'd like you to see this as an opportunity rather than a punishment. Sam gave a small, unconvincing nod, unsure of what to say. Over the next month, Andre continued, you'll be joining me in various community projects. We'll be working with local youth programs, meeting with neighborhood leaders, and engaging with people who've experienced the impact of policing firsthand. Sam's initial resentment flared up again. With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, I know how to do my job. I don't see what this will accomplish. Andre met his gaze, his expression unreadable. This isn't just about doing your job, Officer Harper. It's about understanding the community you serve. There's a difference between enforcing the law and being part of the community. Sam looked down, the weight of the mayor's words sinking in. For the first time, he found himself wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was something he needed to learn. After his meeting with Mayor Blackwell, Sam left City Hall feeling unsettled. The mayor's words had struck a nerve, though he couldn't quite admit it to himself. He'd spent years believing his role as a police officer was straightforward: protect, serve, and uphold the law. But now, Andre Blackwell was challenging him to rethink everything he thought he knew about his job. The following day, Sam found himself back at City Hall, reluctantly prepared to begin this unconventional assignment. The mayor greeted him with the same calm demeanor, unfazed by Sam's obvious discomfort. Today, we'll be visiting an after-school program on the south side of town, Andre explained as they walked to his car. It's a place where young people come to learn, get tutoring, and stay out of trouble. Many of them come from families who've had negative experiences with law enforcement. Sam gave a tight nod, holding back a defensive comment. He couldn't deny that some people in the community distrusted the police, but he still felt it was his job to keep order, whether people appreciated it or not. They arrived at the center, a modest building with colorful murals on the walls and a well-worn basketball court out front. Inside, children laughed and played, their energy filling the space with life. Sam felt out of place in his uniform, conscious of the curious glances the kids gave him. Andre introduced Sam to the program director, a middle-aged woman named Ms. Tasha. She greeted Andre warmly, but her smile faltered when she shook Sam's hand. So, you're the officer who'll be helping us out? She asked, her tone polite but wary. Sam felt a twinge of discomfort, but he nodded. Yes, ma'am. I'm here to learn, he replied, his voice lacking conviction. Good, Ms. Tasha said, her gaze steady. Because there's a lot to learn here. As Sam followed her into the bustling activity room, he realized he was in for more than he had bargained for. The after-school program was bustling with noise and activity. Kids were working on art projects, some were studying, and others played games in the corner. Ms. Tasha directed Sam to a group of teens gathered around a table, their notebooks and textbooks open, but their focus split between homework and hushed conversations. Why don't you start by helping these students with their assignments? Ms. Tasha suggested, her tone a mix of politeness and expectation. Sam gave a stiff nod and pulled up a chair, feeling the kids' eyes on him. He cleared his throat, trying to ease the tension. So, what are we working on today? He asked, glancing at their books. One of the teens, a tall boy with sharp eyes and a wary expression, spoke up first. Algebra, he muttered, barely looking up. As Sam tried to explain a concept, he noticed the group's guarded behavior. They barely met his gaze, their replies clipped and their expressions tense. It dawned on him that his presence was doing more harm than good. These kids weren't comfortable around him. Just then, Andre walked by, casually joining their group. The students visibly relaxed, a few even smiled, and the conversation loosened. Andre chatted with them effortlessly, asking about their goals, their challenges, and their dreams. Sam observed, feeling both out of place and strangely humbled by how easily Andre connected with them. One of the girls looked at Sam and finally spoke. Why are you here, officer? I mean, really? The question stung, but Sam took a deep breath. I'm here to learn, to understand what it's like for all of you, he said, realizing he meant it more than he expected. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, and for the first time, he saw a hint of openness from the group. Maybe he thought this wouldn't be so simple after all. The next few days were challenging. Sam continued his community work, following Mayor Blackwell's guidance, but it was clear he wasn't welcome everywhere. He felt the wary eyes of parents, the cool responses from community members, and the whispers that quieted whenever he entered a room. The kids at the after-school program had begun to warm up slightly, but outside the center, the distrust was palpable. One afternoon, as he and Andre walked through a neighborhood on their way to a meeting with local leaders, a man stepped forward, his face tense and unforgiving. "You're the cop who arrested the mayor, aren't you?" he demanded, his voice laced with accusation. Sam felt his chest tighten. "Yes, I am," he replied, trying to keep his tone steady. He wanted to explain, to defend himself, but he knew this wasn't the place or time. Andre gave him a slight nod, signaling for him to let it go. The man shook his head, frustration simmering in his gaze. "Do you know what it feels like to walk around here, always wondering if you'll be the next one stopped for looking suspicious?" His question hung heavy in the air, echoing sentiments Sam had heard but never fully absorbed. Sam's instinct was to respond, to explain that he was just doing his job, that he hadn't intended any harm. But he bit back his words, realizing they'd only sound hollow. As they walked on, Andre broke the silence. "You're seeing it now, aren't you? The distrust, the resentment. It's not just about one incident, Sam. It's about years of experiences like it." Sam nodded, the truth settling uncomfortably within him. He felt guilt, yes, but also defensiveness. He hadn't thought of himself as part of the problem. Yet here he was, faced with a reality he could no longer ignore. That night, Sam went home with a heavy heart, the voices of the community echoing in his mind. The following morning, Andre invited Sam to meet him at a small coffee shop on the edge of town. Sam was surprised by the invitation. He'd expected their interactions to remain strictly professional, but he showed up, curious and admittedly eager for a chance to speak with the mayor one-on-one. They ordered their coffee and settled into a quiet booth near the window, the early morning light casting a warm glow over the table. Andre sipped his coffee thoughtfully, then looked at Sam with a gentleness that surprised him. "Tell me, Sam," Andre began, "why did you become a police officer?" Sam blinked, caught off guard by the question. He hadn't thought about it in years. "Well, I guess I wanted to make a difference," he said slowly. "My father was a cop, and growing up, I saw him as this protector, someone who made our neighborhood safer. I wanted to be like him." Andre nodded, his gaze never wavering. "So you wanted to protect people, to help?" Sam nodded. "Exactly. I wanted to serve the community, to keep people safe." Andre leaned back, studying him. "Then maybe you understand why I do what I do," he said quietly. "I became mayor for similar reasons, to protect and uplift the people here, to make sure everyone, not just some, feels safe." Sam felt a pang of realization. Andre's purpose wasn't so different from his own, but somehow, along the way, their paths had diverged. "I thought I was doing that," Sam murmured, almost to himself. "I thought I was protecting." Andre gave a small, understanding nod. "Sometimes we get so caught up in enforcing the rules that we lose sight of the people behind them. It's easy to slip into seeing only risks and threats. But true protection means seeing people fully, understanding them." The words lingered, settling deep in Sam's mind. In that quiet coffee shop, he realized he'd spent years focused on his role as an enforcer, forgetting that empathy was just as crucial as authority. The conversation with Andre lingered in Sam's thoughts for days. He had always believed his intentions were pure, that his actions were justified. But now, he couldn't help but see his past encounters in a different light, questioning the choices he had made, the assumptions he'd held. During his next visit to the after-school program, Sam felt a shift in his own approach. Instead of standing on the sidelines, waiting for someone to need help, he decided to engage more directly. He joined a group of teens working on a community project, creating care packages for families in need. He listened to them, asked questions about their lives, and found himself laughing at their jokes. One of the boys, Marcus, who had been particularly distant, began to warm up to him. "You're different than I thought," Marcus said, eyeing Sam curiously. Sam looked at him surprised. "Different how?" Marcus shrugged. "I don't know. Thought cops were all about telling us what we're doing wrong, you know? But you're not as bad as I thought." The comment hit Sam harder than he expected. He hadn't realized how much his uniform, his position, had created a barrier between him and the people he wanted to protect. And now, seeing himself through Marcus's eyes, he understood that he needed to be more than just a badge and a set of rules. After the event, as the kids packed up, Miss Tasha approached him. "The kids are starting to trust you," she said, a note of approval in her voice. "They're seeing the real you." Sam smiled, grateful but humbled. For the first time, he realized that building trust took more than just showing up. It took listening, learning, and being vulnerable enough to admit mistakes. As he left that day, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a true sense of purpose, a new commitment to change, and a promise to himself to see people as they were, not as he assumed them to be. One evening, as Sam was leaving the after-school center, he noticed a group of younger kids struggling with grocery bags a few blocks away. They were laughing, joking, but clearly struggling to balance the bags as they walked, each weighed down by more than they could comfortably carry. Without thinking twice, Sam jogged over, a habit he was developing after days of working closely with the community. "Hey there, need a hand?" he asked, smiling. The kids looked up, startled to see a police officer offering help, but one of the boys nodded, relieved. "Thanks, Officer Sam," he said, handing over a bag that was nearly bursting with vegetables and cans. As they walked, the kids began to chat with him, asking him questions about his life and his job. One of them, a little girl named Mia, looked up at him and asked, "Are you the police officer who works with Mr. Andre?" Sam chuckled, surprised at how the mayor's reputation reached even the youngest in the community. "Yeah, I am. He's helping me learn more about everyone here." The kids seemed to like this answer. They began sharing stories about school, their favorite games, and the things they enjoyed doing at the center. By the time they reached their apartment building, they were laughing and joking with Sam, the initial apprehension melting away. "Thanks, Officer Sam," Mia said with a big smile as they took their groceries and ran inside. As he watched them disappear into the building, Sam felt a warmth spreading through him, a simple but profound sense of connection he hadn't felt before. He realized that small acts of kindness, just like this one, could make all the difference in rebuilding trust. It wasn't just about policies or laws. It was about showing up, being human, and bridging the gap. For the first time, Sam felt like he was truly becoming part of the community he served. Word of Sam's gesture with the kids spread quickly, and it didn't take long for people in the community to start viewing him in a slightly different light. But Sam knew that actions alone wouldn't be enough to mend the damage he had done. Inspired by Andre's example and the trust he'd begun to build, Sam made the decision to issue a public apology. He approached Andre with the idea, and the mayor nodded thoughtfully. "It's a good start, Sam. But remember, this isn't about making yourself look better. It's about acknowledging the hurt you've caused and promising to do better." That evening, a small crowd gathered at the community center. The air was thick with anticipation, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Sam felt his palms sweating as he took his place at the podium. He glanced out at the faces watching him, many of them people who'd experienced firsthand the bias he was now trying to confront within himself. He took a deep breath and began. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry," he said, his voice steady but sincere. "I made a mistake, one rooted in assumptions I should never have made. I judged someone based on how they looked, and in doing so, I hurt not just an individual, but an entire community." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, and continued, "I've been working with Mayor Blackwell, learning more about the people I'm supposed to serve and protect. This experience has opened my eyes, and I realize I have a long way to go. I can't change what I did, but I can change how I move forward." As he finished, the room was silent, but he could feel a shift. Some people nodded, others looked at him thoughtfully, and a few even clapped. It wasn't full acceptance, and he hadn't expected it to be, but it was a start. He left the podium feeling lighter, understanding that change was an ongoing journey he would have to commit to every day. A week after his public apology, Sam attended a city council meeting with Andre. This wasn't just any meeting. It was one where city officials and community leaders were discussing new reforms, including changes to police training and protocols for addressing racial bias. Sam had been invited by Andre to observe and listen, a role he found surprisingly difficult, but ultimately humbling. The council chambers were packed with concerned citizens, activists, and local leaders, each eager to have their voices heard. As the discussion opened, several residents stood to speak, sharing stories of interactions with the police that had left them feeling marginalized, frightened, or even traumatized. Sam listened in silence, each story a reminder of the very issue he was now working to understand. The testimonies were emotional, raw, and they painted a picture he hadn't fully seen before. The experiences shared were real, lived, and a direct response to the system he was part of. A knot formed in his stomach as he realized how deeply the mistrust ran. When it was Andre's turn to speak, he addressed both the council and the audience with a calm, yet passionate demeanor. As your mayor, I'm committed to creating a city where everyone feels safe, where trust in law enforcement isn't conditional based on who you are or where you live, he said, his voice steady. That's why we're here today, to begin implementing real, systemic change. This isn't just about addressing individual incidents, but about ensuring that every officer understands their role as both protector and member of this community. As the council members nodded, Sam felt a surge of respect for Andre's leadership. He saw how much effort it took to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the people they served. Andre wasn't just advocating for change, he was actively building a path for it. After the meeting, a few people approached Sam, offering words of encouragement and tentative support. He knew it was a small step, but in that moment, he felt he was becoming part of the solution rather than the problem. That night, after the council meeting, Sam found himself sitting alone in his apartment, staring at the city lights outside his window. The stories he'd heard in the council chambers played on a loop in his mind, each one challenging the very foundations of how he had always viewed his work. He felt a strange mix of guilt and clarity, an urge to understand the person he had been. The next morning, he reached out to Andre and asked to meet. Andre suggested a park in the heart of the city, a place where families often gathered, and where Sam could see the faces of those he'd vowed to protect. They sat on a bench, watching children play and families stroll by, their laughter and chatter carrying on the breeze. After a moment, Sam turned to Andre. I wanted to talk about my past. I grew up in a family where law and order were everything. My father was a cop, and he was tough. He taught me to see things in black and white. Andre nodded, listening without interrupting. Sam continued, his voice low. I inherited his views without ever questioning them. He believed that keeping order was all that mattered, even if it meant being hard on people. I thought I was doing right by following in his footsteps. But now, I see how that mindset, it blinds you. It made me think I was better than the people I was supposed to protect. Andre gave him a thoughtful look. Understanding where you come from is the first step. You're seeing it now, Sam. The fact that you're questioning yourself is already a sign of growth. Sam took a deep breath, a weight lifting slightly. I want to do better, Andre. I don't want to be that person anymore. Andre placed a hand on his shoulder. Then keep listening, keep showing up. Change is a long road, but you're already on it. Remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. As they sat there, Sam felt a newfound resolve. He knew he couldn't erase his past, but he could choose a different path forward, one built on empathy and understanding. With the end of Sam's month with Andre drawing near, Andre had arranged one final project for them, a community mural. The mural was meant to be a symbol of unity, depicting scenes from the lives of community members, all woven together in a tapestry of hope and resilience. Residents from all parts of the city, young and old, gathered to participate, painting scenes, handprints, and words that represented what they valued most. Sam arrived early, feeling a mix of anticipation and gratitude. He'd come to understand so much in these few weeks about himself, his community, and the role he wanted to play going forward. Today, he was ready to contribute, to make this final gesture one of collaboration rather than command. Andre greeted him with a warm smile, handing him a paintbrush. Thought you might want to add your touch to this, Sam. It's going to be something special. Sam nodded, moved by the gesture. He joined a group of teens who were painting a scene of children playing in the park, their laughter captured in bright colors and joyful expressions. As they worked, he chatted with the teens, listening to their stories and their hopes for the city. They shared dreams of change, of safer streets, of a future where they could walk freely without fear. At one point, a young girl handed him a paintbrush, pointing to an empty section of wall. "Draw something that represents you," she said with a shy smile. After a moment of thought, Sam painted a simple pair of hands extended outward, a gesture of both offering and receiving. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. To him, it represented his commitment to give more than he took, to be a part of the community rather than just a figure of authority. As the mural came to life, residents began gathering to admire the collaborative artwork. Laughter, smiles, and shared stories filled the air. Sam could feel the transformation not only in the mural, but in himself. He had come into this experience feeling like an outsider, yet now he felt connected, part of something larger. By the time the mural was complete, Sam knew that this wasn't the end of his journey. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where he would dedicate himself to building trust, one brushstroke at a time. The following week, Sam reported back to the police station, officially ending his month-long journey alongside Mayor Blackwell. He arrived early, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. As he walked through the familiar halls, he saw things with different eyes, his mind sharpened by the experiences he'd shared with the community. Every interaction, every assumption he'd challenged, had left an indelible mark on him. His colleagues greeted him with mixed reactions, some curious, others skeptical, and a few with clear respect in their eyes. Captain Hayes called him into her office, and as he took a seat, she regarded him thoughtfully. "I've heard about the work you did with Mayor Blackwell," she began, her voice softer than usual. "And I've noticed a change in you, Sam." Sam nodded, a hint of humility in his expression. "It was eye-opening, Captain. I saw things I never would have seen from behind the badge alone. I know now that protecting this city is more than just enforcing laws. It's about building relationships, being part of the community." Captain Hayes gave him a small smile. "I'm glad to hear that. We need more officers who understand that, and I hope you'll carry this with you from now on." Later that day, Andre stopped by the station for a meeting, and as he passed Sam in the hallway, he paused. "Good to see you, Officer Harper," he said with a nod, a knowing look in his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Mayor," Sam replied, his voice filled with gratitude. "For everything. I won't forget it." Andre gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Just remember, Sam, every day is an opportunity to make a difference. Keep showing up, keep listening, and keep building trust." As Sam watched Andre leave, he felt a quiet determination settle within him. This was no longer just a job. It was a mission to bridge gaps, to bring about change from within. He was ready to serve not just as a cop, but as a true protector and ally of his community. And for the first time, he knew exactly what that meant. Thank you so much for joining us on this powerful journey. We hope this story sparked reflection and highlighted the importance of empathy, understanding, and looking beyond first impressions. Through Sam's journey, we saw how small acts of connection can make a huge impact in bridging divides within communities. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, share it with others who might find it meaningful, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire change and promote understanding. Your support helps us continue creating content that brings valuable lessons and impactful narratives to light. Thank you again, and stay tuned for more stories that remind us of the power we all have to make a difference.